It's time for Recipe of the Day. What are egg noodles? Egg noodles are pasta like any other pasta, except that they contain a higher ratio of egg to flour than regular pasta does. Some regular pasta doesn't have any egg. These definitely have egg. And some pastas do have egg. This has more egg. It gives them a richer flavor and that like slightly yellow color. Like any pasta, you want to cook egg noodles in a lot of salted water. So you put the water, just like cold tap water, into a large pot and bring it up to a boil. Then carefully add in your salt. If you add in a lot of salt to boiling water right at once, it can kind of spatter and overflow. So sprinkle it in a little bit slowly. For my big pot that I use for cooking pasta, I use 2 tablespoons of salt. If you have a big pot, you'll probably need that much as well. You do need quite a bit. Now, why do we use so much water when we're cooking pasta? There's actually 2 reasons. One is that when we add the noodles, the dry pasta, to the water, it drops its temperature down, right? The more water there is, the less that temperature drops down, and then the noodles start cooking in that simmering water faster. Also, the pasta, when it first hits the water, could start sticking to itself or sticking to other noodles, right? They all kind of start to kind of clump together because they're like stodgy. They're not fully cooked yet. When you have more water, lots of water, that pasta can move around in there better, and then it's less likely to stick. This is kind of the opposite of making risotto. When you make risotto, you want less liquid so that the rice grains are bumping into each other and releasing their starch because they're hitting it off of each other, right? We don't want that to happen with our pasta. We want them to stay separate, so we're using lots of water. And then lots of water means they're moving more, they're not clumping together, they're going to cook more evenly because they're circulating. Now, for a similar reason, when you first add the pasta to the water, you want to stir it for a little while. I pretty much stir it continuously or like every, 30 seconds or so until it comes up to a boil. That's for the same reason. As they're first getting moistened, they're more likely to stick together. So having lots of water and then stirring prevents that. Once it comes back up to a boil, then you reduce it down to a simmer. Now, it takes a little bit of jiggling to get the right temperature. You want the pot to just be bubbling. So what I do is I drop the temperature down all the way to low and then stir occasionally and see what happens. If it cools so much that it stops bubbling, I increase the temperature a little bit to like medium low. If it stays nice and simmering, and then I leave it alone. Okay, once the pot of water comes up to a boil and then you drop it down to a simmer, then you set your timer. How long do you set a timer for? I always set it for the lower range on the pasta that I bought. So if the pasta instructions say simmer for 8 to 10 minutes, I'll set my timer for 8 minutes. Then you just stir it every minute or so. And when the timer goes off at 8 minutes, you have to test if the pasta is done. I think there's all kinds of techniques for doing this. People like throw it against the wall, and if it sticks, it's done. I don't do that. I just fish out one noodle with a pair of tongs and I kind of shake it over the pot for a second just so it can kind of cool off in the cooler air. And then I taste it. If it is how I want it, then I get out a big colander and drain the pasta down the colander. If it's not the way I want it, I'll leave it for another minute. The only exception to this is if I'm making these noodles and they're going to be like going into a sauce for a while, like a baked pasta or a pasta salad or anything where they're going to be in liquid for a while and they're going to continue to absorb things and cook, then I will undercook them slightly. So then I would probably set my timer for more like 7 minutes. If the bag said 8 to 10 minutes, I'd set it for 7 minutes and then I'd taste it. And if it's like soft and nice, but like a little more al dente than I want, then that is perfect for that purpose. Now, when it comes to draining the pasta, if you're making a recipe that says that you need the pasta water for anything, it's usually to do with adding it to a sauce to thin it out, add some salt and some starchiness from the pasta water. You need to scoop out some of that water and you need to not forget to do so. I tell you this all the time, but I'm going to tell you here again. The best way to remember to scoop out that water is as soon as you read the instruction that says scoop out some pasta water or reserve some pasta water, take your colander, put it in a clean sink, and then add a measuring cup to the colander. That way, when you go to drain the pasta, you're going to see the measuring cup there. You're going to stop what you're doing, get your measuring cup, and scoop out the water. Okay. Now, if you don't need the water for anything, you don't have to do any scooping. Don't even get out a measuring cup. Just pour that water down the colander. Okay. Once you've drained that pasta, you're going to return it to the empty pot that it was cooking in. That's because that pot is hot and that's going to help us melt that butter better and keep our pasta nice and warm, right? Now, the only problem with that is sometimes pots can retain heat really, really well. And that is true of the pot that I tend to cook my pasta in. And so then what happens is if I drain the pasta and transfer it back to that hot pot, it actually starts sticking to the bottom, and sometimes it'll even kind of like brown there because it's that hot. So what I do is drain the pasta through the colander, leave it in the colander for a minute, and then I just take some cool tap water and just run it on the bottom of the pot, like inside into the bottom of the pot, just to cool it down a little bit, just for a moment. That's all it needs. Spill that out and then put the pasta into that pot. Okay, now we add the butter. The easiest thing to do is to just take 4 to 6 tablespoons of butter for 16 ounces of egg noodles. You can do less, you can do more, and cut it into tiny little pieces. And then you add that to those hot noodles in the pot, stir it, and it'll melt. You could instead melt it in the microwave or on the stove in a pot before, and then it'll be already melted. But I kind of like the melting it with the pasta. I think it kind of maybe even emulsifies with some of the water that's still sticking to the pasta. It just works really well. I love that a lot. Then taste it, and you can add some salt if you need, a little bit of pepper. I really like to add some fresh parsley. I go for Italian parsley, which is the flat leaf, not the curly. That's really nice in there, but totally optional. And then serve. That is how you make buttered egg noodles. I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is August 13th of 2025. The other thing you can do there is subscribe to this podcast. If you want to hear a new recipe every single day, what you want to do is go to cookthestory.com/ROTD and you will see the buttons where you can subscribe on the top. So best to do this on your phone because that's where your podcast app is, right? And then you click on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts and it takes you right to the recipe of the day podcast there. You can click subscribe or follow, and then you will see the new episodes every single day in your feed. The other way that you can subscribe is get your phone out, go to the podcast app that you like the most and search for recipe of the day there and then subscribe. You will find it. I promise. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all new chicken cookbook. And from this podcast, recipe of the day, I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.